I'm not sure if I have the words to describe how difficult of a chapter The Prince of Winterfell was to read and experience. I read a bunch of chapters of A Dance with Dragons over the last 2 days, probably about 10. And these 10 chapters had some of the most difficult to read things that I've ever consumed, to be quite honest. It all started off earlier today when I read Bran 3, which is the chapter when Jojen Reed, it's theorized, but it's basically fact, becomes a paste that Bran must eat in order to become a stronger Greenseer. I truly believe that that chapter and that singular moment was going to be the worst thing that I read today regarding A Song of Ice and Fire, and nothing was going to top the gut-wrenching feeling I felt while reading it. And then I read The Prince of Winterfell, which I want to say, for some of the worst reasons, is one of the best chapters in A Dance with Dragons. It is so well written. All of the just unbelievable themes and parallels to Theon's previous life, to who he was before he became Reek, to all of the good experiences that he had in Winterfell, to all of the bad ones. Just this was an unbelievable character study of a chapter of who Theon, who Reek, who this character currently is at this moment in time. But I just can't help but never want to reread this chapter due to what happens with the Jeyne pool here. Jeyne is one of these characters throughout A Song of Ice and Fire that I just can't help but feel terrible for. Every single time she is on screen, she just has the worst parts of humanity shoved in front of her. And it's to the point where I don't even know what I want to do for this character. I feel so terrible. The Prince of Winterfell is about Ramsay Bolton's wedding to Arya Stark, who is really Jeyne Poole. And in this chapter, we get a lot of interesting things happening with Jeyne and with Theon. The first thing Theon notices that is a really disgusting theory that is, again, a terrible thing to read, but I feel differently about it, is Mr. Manderley made something called Frey pies. So for those of you that do not know, because you haven't read the books, Wyman Manderley, who was a lord in the north, basically hunted down a few Frey soldiers, and even though it's not fact, it is heavily theorized that he hunted them down, cut them up, made pies out of them, then brought them to Ramsay Bolton's wedding feast, and fed them to the Freys and the Boltons in this sick and twisted moment of revenge that he is so unbelievably happy and giddy for, that he has like 3 of the pies, gets completely and utterly drunk, and just is loving it all. And when I read this, I really thought that was going to be the worst thing that happened in this chapter, because how on earth could one chapter contain something worse than cannibalism? Especially in a story like A Song of Ice and Fire that I wouldn't really consider that gory all the time. Like, sure, it's definitely a difficult story to get through and it's very graphic, but I wouldn't say it's in style for George to go out of his way to show just unbelievable brutality at all times in a story. You usually don't get multiple in the same chapter. But then we get to the end of the chapter, and I have to be very careful about the way I word this, but this is the wedding and the bedding of Jeyne Poole. And Ramsay Bolton is a cruel man. But I honestly didn't understand how cruel he was until I read this chapter. This is a man who's flayed Theon, who's done an unbelievable amount of horrible things to this character. But to force Theon to do something to someone else like that, I'm going to be very careful here. Jeyne is not ready for what is coming. Ramsay's not happy with that, so he makes Theon do some things to basically prepare her for Ramsay. And just saying that out loud, it's tough for me to get it out there, because it's just, oh my god, it's so much and so painful. And Theon feels so disgusted by himself, by what he is doing, by what Ramsay, the control that Ramsay has over him. And Theon in his head is like, I can kill Ramsay. I can stop this. I'll die. Maybe I'll get flayed for it, but there is a very good chance that I could kill Ramsay and make this not happen. But he just doesn't have it in him, because he is so unbelievably broken and so unbelievably lost and just so unbelievably afraid. There's really, I don't even have the words to describe how brutal of a chapter this was. And just generally speaking, I think I want to say A Dance with Dragons, as of page 500, has been my favorite book of the series to read, even with all of the grotesque things, just because of how rich it is in terms of characterization. It's a very character-focused book that is expanding the scope of the story. But it is so difficult to come to terms with, because with this being such a rich character-driven story that has this very honest telling of what reality is like for people and what humanity, the darkest side of humanity, what that is like, it is so hard for me as a reader to come face to face with the reality of what so many people in the real world go through. All of these super hard things in A Song of Ice and Fire are real. They're not things that George R. R. Martin is just imagining. They're not things that are the sadistic ideas of one person. These are hard things that are happening to men and women and people in our real world every day, even now. And when I am faced with that in a story, and especially someone like me who really dives deep and does his best to breathe in every aspect of what the author is trying to tell me, it is such a damn, wake up call and just unbelievable feeling that overpowers me when I read stuff like this, because I just know that this is happening to people, and there's I can't help them. It just hurts. And A Dance with Dragons is the kind of book, and A Song of Ice and Fire is the kind of story that you read, and if you actually take in everything that is being said and do your best to look at the story from a practical angle and really care about what you're reading, it will radicalize you. It will make you see things in such a different light and give you such a different perspective that you just haven't had before. I heard a really good quote last night that says, "The person who doesn't read will only live one lifetime. The person who does read will live thousands." And I feel like when I'm reading A Song of Ice and Fire, whenever I'm in the head of a POV character, especially the really good ones, like Jon Snow, like Theon, like Catelyn, like Daenerys, all these really good characters, I really feel I become that character. Their tragedies become my tragedies. Their pain becomes my pain. Their triumphs become my triumphs. Their personality latches onto mine, grabs it, takes hold of it, and twists it to be them. And it is for the better, because I change for the better when I read these chapters. But the ability George R. R. Martin has to grab the reins of the reader and say, this is the direction this story is taking, and you have to buckle down for it because it is not going to be easy. I applaud the work and just unbelievable skill that goes into writing such a fantastic novel, such a fantastic story. And it's really ironic that probably the hardest chapter I've ever read is drawing out the most emotion from me in terms of both positive and negative. Because what I've learned in my 21 years of life is that to be changed by a story, to be changed by anything, you have to be hit with something so groundbreaking that you cannot help but look it in the eyes and acknowledge that you need to think about this differently, that you need to really stir on this and decide what kind of person you want to be based off of what you are consuming. After reading The Prince of Winterfell, which I would deem in all of its tragic glory the best chapter I have read in A Dance with Dragons, and probably the worst in some ways chapter I have read in A Song of Ice and Fire, I just sit here. I had to put the book down, but I will be a better person for this because of how much this moment affected me. And I just can't. If you haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire, or you've seen the TV show Game of Thrones and don't think that you should read A Song of Ice and Fire, I really can't recommend it enough, because this story will change you the way it has changed me. I'm going to keep updating you guys on my progress through Dance with Dragons. This book has been groundbreaking for me, and I just can't be thankful enough that I get to experience this.